If I asked you to close your eyes and picture the most frustrating, blood pressure spiking part of your week, I'm willing to bet a good number of you are going to picture a windshield.
Oh, absolutely.
You're gripping the wheel, staring at a sea of red brake lights, and you are just completely stuck. Traffic is the great equalizer, right?
It really is. It doesn't matter who you are. Gridlock just makes everyone miserable. It feels like a total waste of life.
Now, imagine that headache is happening in Washington, D.C. If you've ever driven there, you know it's already a special kind of torture.
The special kind of chaos, for sure.
But right now, we aren't just here to complain about D.C. traffic. We're talking about a very specific, high-stakes plan to fix it that is causing an absolute meltdown among urban planners.
That's right. Usually, when the government talks about fixing traffic, we hear about infrastructure week, maybe building a bridge. But the rumor swirling around the Capitol suggests the new administration has a very different target in mind.
Their target isn't a bridge, it isn't a pothole, it's the bike lane.
Specifically, the removal of them.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a fascinating report from Streets Blog USA. It details this brewing conflict between the federal government and the District of Columbia.
And it all centers on this pretty radical idea that bike lanes are the actual villains behind city gridlock.
We are going to look at the data, and there are some numbers in here that are going to absolutely blow your mind and explain why DC is so uniquely vulnerable to this.
And I think we need to be clear right off the top. The stakes here are way higher than just a few unhappy cyclists. If this goes through, it could change how streets are funded and built in your neighborhood, wherever you're listening from.
So let's get into it. We're working from documents obtained by Streets Blog regarding plans from the Trump administration. What exactly is being proposed here? Because removing bike lanes sounds, well, it sounds aggressive.
It does, but that's not the official language.
Oh, of course not.
No, the official language is much more bureaucratic. The Federal Highway Administration, the FHWA, has been conducting this quiet analysis of congestion on major DC corridors.
Okay.
And the phrase they're using is reallocation of lane space.
Reallocation. That is classic government speak. It sounds so harmless.
Right. We're just reallocating the furniture. But sources inside the government say it means one very specific thing: taking that asphalt from cyclists and giving it back to cars.
Okay, but I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. If I'm a driver, and most of us are, and I'm stuck in traffic, and I look over and see an empty-looking bike lane, it feels intuitive, right?
It does.
It feels like simple math. You get rid of the paint, you put cars there, traffic moves faster.
And that is the core argument. That's the logic coming from the top. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said back in April that when you subtract a car lane for a bike lane, you create a bottleneck.
And the analysis backs that up.
Well, the FHWA analysis claims drivers are losing hundreds of thousands of hours a year because of these lanes.
Hundreds of thousands of hours? When you put it like that, it sounds like an economic crisis. Like we're destroying the economy one bicycle at a time.
It's a massive number. It's designed to be a headline. But this is where we have to, look at the methodology. Because when you dig into which roads they're flagging, the logic starts to wobble.
How so?
It's the premise. The report lists several roads as congestion failures caused by bike lanes. But in some of those cases, a full car lane wasn't even removed.
What do you mean?
The lanes were just narrowed, shrunk by a foot or so to squeeze the bike lane in. The number of cars that can fit across the road didn't actually change.
Oh, wait, hold on. If I have 2 lanes, and I still have 2 lanes, just slightly skinnier, how does that cost me thousands of hours of delay?
That is the million-dollar question. The implication is that narrower lanes make people drive slower or something. But this leads us to this fascinating contradiction.
Okay.
The FHWA, the very agency doing this analysis, actually contradicts this finding on their own public website.
So their own website says their own analysis is wrong.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The FHWA's own engineering guidance, which is based on decades of studies, states that decreasing travel lane widths to add a bike lane generally does not increase crashes or congestion.
So we have a situation where the political leadership is saying one thing.
Bike lanes cause traffic.
And the engineering manual is saying, actually, no, they don't.
Exactly. It feels like a political fact facing off against an engineering fact. And in that scenario, you have to look at a real-world test case.
Right. We need to see what actually happened on the ground.
And Streets Blog highlighted a perfect case study for this. 9th Street NW.
Okay, for those who don't know D.C., paint the picture. What's 9th Street like?
It's a major artery. It cuts right through the city. Lots of cars, delivery trucks, everything.
Yeah.
So the city installed a protected bike lane there.
So if the secretary's logic is correct, Ninth Street should have turned into a parking lot, a total disaster zone.
You'd think so. But here's what actually happened. Let's start with safety. Roadway crashes on 9th Street dropped by 43%.
Wow. Nearly half. That is a staggering drop.
It's huge. And that's not just cyclists. That's fewer fender benders, fewer pedestrians getting hit, and usage. Bicycle traffic shot up by 365%.
Okay, so it's safer, and people are actually using it. It's not an empty lane. But I can hear the skeptics yelling, "That's great for the cyclists, but did my commute get longer?"
Right. Did I pay for that safety with my time?
Exactly.
This is the part that usually blows people's minds. After the bike lane was installed, the average peak hour travel time for cars went down.
Down, as in faster.
Cars got through the corridor about 30 seconds faster than they did before the bike lane existed.
Okay, you have to stop and explain the physics of that to me, because my brain is rejecting it. You take away space from cars and they move faster.
It defies highway logic,
Yeah.
but it makes perfect sense in city logic. It comes down to something engineers call friction.
Friction, okay. Break that down for me.
Well, imagine a wide, multi-lane city street that looks like an open road, so people are weaving, speeding up to beat a light, then slamming on brakes because a car is turning left. It's chaotic.
That's friction, the hurry up and wait nightmare.
Precisely. Now, when you install a protected bike lane, you often redesign the street. You might add a dedicated turning pocket, so the car turning left isn't blocking everyone behind it.
Okay, so you're organizing the traffic better.
Exactly. And second, when you narrow the lanes, drivers subconsciously pay more attention. They drive at a more consistent speed rather than gunning it. Steady speed is almost always faster than stop and go.
The steady jogger beats the erratic sprinter who keeps tripping.
Perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a third factor, pedestrians. When you narrow the road, the crossing distance is shorter.
Which means the walking man light doesn't need to be on for as long.
Bingo. Shorter red lights for cars. It all adds up. You end up with a street that moves more people more safely with less delay.
That is so counterintuitive, but when you break it down like that, it makes sense. So if the data is this clear, why is the FHWA trying to remove them?
Because there's a philosophical battle happening over how we measure success. There's a brilliant quote in the source material from Steve Davis at Transportation for America.
Okay.
He says, "Measuring a street's success only by vehicle delay is like measuring your health only by checking your weight while ignoring your cholesterol and blood pressure."
Right. You could be starving yourself to hit a number on the scale, but you're about to have a heart attack.
Exactly. If the only metric you care about is did the car save 10 seconds, you are ignoring everything else. The safety of pedestrians, the life of the shops on the block. You're optimizing for a machine, not a city.
And that leads to another big concept from the research, induced demand. We hear this term a lot. Can we unpack it? Because the whole argument for removing lanes is to cure congestion.
But adding car lanes almost never cures congestion long term.
So what is induced demand?
It's basically the build it and they will come rule of traffic. Callie Crumpos from the Washington Area Bicyclist Association points this out. If you widen a road to make driving easier, people notice. They say, hey, traffic's better. I'll drive today instead of taking the metro.
And pretty soon, the road is full again.
It fills right back up. It's a short-term illusion. Stripping out bike lanes to solve gridlock is like loosening your belt to treat obesity. It feels better for a minute, but you haven't solved the underlying problem.
I want to pivot to the why now question. Is traffic in D.C. just historically awful right now? Is that what's driving this?
You'd think so, right? But the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments just released their 2025 State of the Commute report.
And let me guess, it says traffic is apocalyptic.
Actually, no. It says there has been no significant change in travel times for D.C. drivers in recent years. Commute times are stable.
So there isn't some new crisis.
The data says no, which suggests the motivation here isn't about solving a sudden traffic jam, it's more about ideology.
Okay, so this brings us to the politics. Why D.C.? Why is the federal government getting involved in local street planning at all?
This is where things get really sticky. D.C. is in a very unique and, frankly, vulnerable position.
Right. It's not a state.
Exactly. It operates under limited home rule. They have a mayor and a council, but ultimately, Congress is the boss. And D.C. has no voting representation in Congress to protect its interests.
So a city with more people than some states has no vote on its own laws.
Correct. And on top of that, the actual pavement on many major D.C. streets is technically owned or controlled by the National Park Service or the National Highway System.
Even if it just looks like a normal city street.
Yes. So the administration has a direct lever to pull. But there's a massive irony here that the expert commentary points out.
What's that?
Think about the general philosophy of platforms like Project 2025. What's the usual mantra?
Small government, states' rights, local control.
It's exactly devolution of responsibility.
Huh.
But this proposal is the exact opposite. This is the federal government reaching down and saying, we don't care what your local data says. We want the street to look like this.
So it's local control for everyone else, just not for D.C.
That seems to be the dynamic. And we've seen D.C. fold under this pressure before. The source mentions Mayor Muriel Bowser previously removed a Black Lives Matter mural after pressure from Sean Duffy. When the feds threaten funding, the local government often has to capitulate.
They're stuck. And this is why advocates are calling D.C. the canary in the coal mine.
It is.
This is the part I really want to drill down on. If I'm listening to this in Chicago or Phoenix, why should I care about a bike lane on 9th Street?
Because the mechanism they are threatening to use can apply anywhere. It's all about the power of the purse.
The federal grant money.
Exactly. The federal government funds a huge chunk of state transportation budgets. And the White House is increasingly using the threat of withdrawing those grants to force compliance.
So let's say my city, Austin, applies for a grant to fix a dangerous intersection. They want to add a crosswalk and a bike lane.
And under this new philosophy, the feds could look at that and say, sorry, our new metric is vehicle throughput. Your design slows cars down by 4 seconds. No money for you.
Wow. So they could effectively kill complete streets projects nationwide just by changing the criteria for the checkbook.
Exactly. It signals a pivot back to, like, 1955 era planning.
The golden age of the highway.
The era where the only goal was moving cars as fast as possible.
Mhm.
We've spent 20 years moving toward Vision Zero, the idea that no one should die on a road. This suggests the pendulum might be swinging violently back.
And that's terrifying. We know what that kind of street design looks like. It's fast, it's dangerous, and it disconnects communities.
And it ignores the economic reality, too. If you only look at the speedometer, you get a much poorer, much more dangerous city.
It's like we're unlearning all the lessons of the last 50 years of urban planning.
It feels that way. And Kelly Crumpos put it bluntly in the article. If changes are implemented here, they could be targeting your community next. The D.C. experiment is the proof of concept.
So, to wrap this up, we have a federal push to reallocate space to cars based on data about lost hours that seems cherry-picked at best.
Right. They claim congestion. But the engineering reality is that well-designed bike lanes often make traffic flow better.
And we have a political situation where a local city is being overruled by a national ideology.
And most importantly, we have a warning sign for every other city in America. If the definition of a successful street changes at the federal level, your local safety projects could be next on the chopping block.
It really changes how you look at a strip of white paint. It's not just a lane, it's a battleground for what we value. Getting somewhere 30 seconds faster or getting there safely.
It really is. It asks the fundamental question, who are our streets for? Are they just pipes for moving cars, or are they places for people?
That's the question I want to leave you with today. Next time you're on your main street, take a look around. If the federal government decides that the only thing that matters is how fast a vehicle can move through that space, what happens to the coffee shop on the corner? What happens to the kids walking to school?
And does your local city council actually have the power to protect them if the federal funding dries up?
That's it for this deep dive. Keep your eyes on the road and maybe pay a little more attention to who's paying for it. Thanks for listening.